Hunter, you don't have to play bad Spider-Man games anymore.
Thank you.
Hunter, you don't have to...
Hello everyone, it is Hunter from Gaming by Gamers and welcome back to Web Series episode 16. Man, we're finally on the last game. It feels like just 11 months ago when I first played Spider-Man for the Atari 2600. Might be because it is. Anyways, let's finally play Marvel's Spider-Man for the PlayStation 4. Before we start, I want to warn everyone that there will be spoilers, so if you haven't played the game and you still want to, leave now. Alright, I'm serious. All bets are off. Now. Uncle Ben is dead! So this game starts off with a pre-rendered cutscene that masterfully shows off who Peter is. Without saying anything, it says everything. He is Spider-Man. He's a slob, poor, a science nerd, and he's been Spider-Man for a while now. All of that without any words being said. There is so much charm shoved into this small opening cutscene. Spider-Man then jumps out of his window and... What? This is gameplay? Did you ever hear the rumor when you were a kid that someone played the newest game system? For me, it was the PlayStation 3, and the graphics were so good that they went blind. I think in this case, it could actually be true. This has to be one of the best transitions from cutscene to gameplay I have ever seen. I seriously thought this was a pre-rendered cutscene, and when you gain control, I couldn't stop grinning. And I just kept grinning because right away we start swinging around the city. If this was the entire game, I would still pay $60 for it. Every problem I had with the other games was solved in this. It just feels so perfect. Your web's attached to the buildings again. You're not too fast to the point where you can't control it, and you're not too slow to where you feel like you ate a couple of those pizzas you were supposed to deliver. Gravity feels exactly like it should. One of the main takeaway I got from playing all these games is that it's very easy to tell when gravity doesn't feel quite right. And when I went into this game, I was worried it would be the same. But after swinging around for just a little bit, all my fears were washed away. It's something that doesn't translate to video too well, but when you pick up a controller and swing yourself, you'll know right away exactly what I'm talking about. Speaking of things that feel natural, let's talk about the combat. Maybe it's because I've been playing Spider-Man games for the last year, but the combat in this game was like second nature. There wasn't a lot of tutorials on combat, but I didn't feel like I needed them. I was really impressed by how intuitive the controls were. Ground attacks were pretty simple, and you learn more moves like air punches and web attacks as you progress through the game. The web attacks are the really interesting one and become even more deep as you get upgrades and gadgets. The upgrade system in this game is pretty straightforward. You earn tokens for specific tasks like saving a civilian or catching pigeons. Okay, I'll come back to that later. The upgrades range from attack, defense, and swinging. I really liked how straightforward this was. Personally, I don't think Spider-Man games need to have an overly complicated skill tree, but I'm getting off track. The story starts out with the police sieging Fisk Tower and you go help them. Everything in the game was going really well. The swinging was fun, the combat was awesome, until I heard this.
What? Is it National Rocket Day or something?
Don't do this to me. I can't take it.
You tased me, bro.
Not again. It wouldn't be fair for me to call out the cringy dialogue in other games, but not this one. Fortunately, that's the only real bad dialogue in the game. As we progress up Fisk Tower, we get to our first boss fight with the Kingpin. It's a relatively simple boss fight. You dodge his attacks and then web him up or throw objects at him. I thought this was pretty fun. It's not anything really new though. This is how you fight plenty of boss battles in other Spider-Man games. The drawback with fighting Kingpin is it's the same formula for every boss. Throughout the entire game, there is little to no variety with how you fight the bosses. You dodge their attacks, and then you use webbing or objects to stagger and attack them. Rinse and repeat. Certain boss fights don't suffer from this as much because there's an emotional connection behind them, but most of the Sinister Six have little screen time, so their fights just feel repetitive. There's also quick time events with a lot of the bosses or big moments in the game. Most of the time they actually enhance the experience by not overdoing it and popping up at expected times. I honestly don't even know if it's possible to fail them. They're very generous with their time on screen, so I didn't miss one my entire playthrough. Once you beat Kingpin, the police put him into custody, city and he screams that he was the one keeping order in the city. Now you swing over to the lab you work at, which is run by Dr. Octavius. He's not a supervillain, just a scientist who Peter's working for. At the lab, you have to do these little puzzles in order to fix what Octavius is working on. They're really just like the puzzles from BioShock. I can't really say I had any fun doing these, and there's quite a few throughout the game. They give you the option to skip them, which just makes me think, why would you put it in there? If you're not confident enough to make it mandatory, there's no point of putting it in. I know they wanted to mix gameplay up a bit, but I think this was a pretty boring way to do it. Once you solve a few of these puzzles though, it fixes the mechanical arm Doc Ock was working on, and you get to play around with it a bit. Oh man, I know what this could be used for.
Wait, it's November, that's not gonna fly!
Anyways, Peter and Doc are working on a mechanical arm that would be helpful to people who have lost their limbs. I really like this take on Doc Ock. He's just a guy who's trying to improve the world. Later in the story, we find out he has a degenerative neurological disorder, meaning that he'll soon be trapped in a body that doesn't work. You can really see the struggle he goes through and the bond him and Peter form throughout the game. It really does feel like a father and son working together to try and improve the world. We'll touch more on him later, but this has to be one of my favorite renditions of the character, besides him and the superior Spider-Man storyline, of course. Moving on, one of the game's core features is these towers scattered around the city. When I first saw this, I thought I was playing a Ubisoft game, but because there isn't a ton of them, and it's so easy to reach them, I really didn't have a problem with it. When you unscramble the message on the tower, you unlock a piece of the map. This was a pretty smart way to incentivize you to explore more rather than just go from mission to mission. There are a few other collectibles and side quests, but most of them are pretty hit or miss. Listen, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I didn't 100% this game before I wrote the review. I beat the main story and some of the side quests, but I don't always have time to do everything before I make the video. So I haven't played all the side quests, but here are a few I have played. Catch a pigeon. Look for a stuffed animal. Swing through a cloud of farts. Get a backpack. Okay, this one is actually pretty cool to see all the references.
All I did was save this kid's balloon from floating away and he made me this. It's the little things that make it all worth it.
Big deal, I can draw way better than that. Stupid kid. His arms aren't even that big, idiot.
So I think it goes without saying that I thought the side missions were pretty boring. I enjoyed the random crimes, towers, and backpacks, but that's really about it. Maybe I just have to get further into them to start enjoying it, but we'll see. The main story missions are awesome though. Now that Kingpin is away in jail, a bunch of other gangs are trying to take his place, the main being the Demons. There's a pretty decent amount of variety with the enemy types. There's Kingpin's gangs, the Demons, Stablesmen, escape prison inmates, and a few others. They have the standard classes in each faction: normal goon, long range, shield, sniper, and usually a brute. The combat is so fun though, it doesn't really bug me that you fight a lot of the same guys over and over, the demons being the most common. Now the enemies might not have the most variety, but the missions sure do, for better or for worse. Let's start with the bad: Mary Jane and Miles Morales. Quite a few times throughout the game you get to play as MJ and Miles. These are always stealth missions and they always ruin the pacing of the game. It's hard to go from being this larger-than-life superhero who's pulling trains and catching helicopters in the air to being Mary Jane Watson, who, if you get seen, instantly fails the mission. And same with Miles. The further into the missions you get, they try and switch things up a bit. They give you ways to hack things or little distractions, but that really doesn't qualify as fun to me. They just feel so helpless. And they should, because they're real people and it grounds you and really reminds you how powerful Spider-Man is. But it just doesn't translate well to gameplay. I mean, just look at Mary Jane. She kills herself because her parts of the game are so boring. It's a shame too, because I actually really like Miles and MJ's characters. Their stories are just as interesting to me as Spider-Man's because they're so well written. And in a game with this big of a cast, I'm very impressed. Honestly, that's really the only big complaint I have with the main missions. I love the campaign in this game.
I want to talk more about this, but I'm gonna have to cut this video short and talk about it in the second part. I know this video kind of already seems short, but that's because when I was recording on the PlayStation 4, it turns out that if you have the headphone jack plugged into your controller, it doesn't record any audio on your capture card. So I played through the entire game without recording any audio. So please bear with me. The next episode and the final episode will release in 1 week instead of the normal 2. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a like. If you want to see more, click the subscribe button and the bell, and be sure to hit both of those because the next episode is the actual finale, and we're finally going to finish this. Thank you again so much for watching, and have a great day.